Many people have asked me over the years whether I was going to go for the Kappa container in Escape from Tarkov, and my answer was always no, because I didn't have enough time to waste on the awful quests contained within this challenge. The last time I did Kappa was about 4 or 5 years ago, but everything has changed with Tarkov 1.0 and Kappa is now more achievable than ever before. There are 3 main reasons why this is the case in-game, but the most fundamental one that overarches the entire situation is the fact that your main character will no longer wipe in EFT. Here I'm going to show you the exact quote from the horse's mouth, as we don't know precisely how this is going to work yet, but I would say that it is overwhelmingly likely that your main account will never wipe, and any new characters, when we get a wipe in, say next summer, will start branched off from this main one instead.
The 1.0 character you play, you could technically never have to wipe that character, correct? You could play that character forever.
Yes.
There you go.
Quite obviously, one of the biggest problems with Kappa is the inability to complete it in a 6-month time period, and with the uncertainty of the dates of wipes in the past, it was never sure whether you are actually going to get it done on time if you were a normal player. For those who were a bit more casual, it was almost certain that you would never be able to complete it within those 6 months, as the amount of time the game requires of you to play it is just more than most people have available. Sure, parts of Kappa are hard, but it's not that difficult, it's mainly just a time sink. So with this main change out of the way, that being the permanent character, which I do think is a really big deal, there are 3 main gameplay changes that make it much more reasonable, and this starts with the bolt action quests. Between Tarkov Shooters parts 1 through 8 and Shooterborn in Heaven, never mind Psycho Sniper at the end, you have to use bolt actions a lot in various missions across the game, and this puts a lot of people off because many don't like using bolt actions in Escape from Tarkov. When using these guns, it feels like you put yourself at a serious disadvantage, and the advantages that they do have over other weapons that are more like marksman's rifles are very niche and not enough to give up having semi-auto. The game's already hard enough without hamstringing yourself, but with 1.0, the introduction of the Marlin lever action has made this whole series of quests a lot more doable. Simply the fact that the repeater allows you to take many more shots on target means that an opportunity where you spent 20 to 30 minutes stalking a target to get the perfect shot doesn't feel wasted like it can do with the bolt action if, for example, the PMC ducks at the last moment and you miss and they're never seen again. This can be extremely frustrating and is one of the reasons why I never wanted to do it. Now, there have been a few balancing changes to this gun so far. It started on Jaeger 2 with both the gun and both types of ammo, including the good one, which is 308 ME. Then it moved up to Mechanic 2 for the good ammo, and finally Mechanic 3 with an expensive barter at Mechanic 2 for the good ammo. But although this bolt action is very good for completing these missions, it's not necessarily a no-brainer over the others either. To start with, it can only hold 5 rounds in its magazine, giving you 6 shots total, and it can't be suppressed either, meaning that once you fire, everybody knows where you are. I've personally found this extremely fun. Rather than sneaking around trying to get people with suppressed weapons, players are more likely to come and fight you if they know where you are rather than hide, because when they're shot at suppressed, then they're going to duck down and disappear. But if you fire at them with the Marlin, then they're going to come after you, and this has really helped complete the quest. It also means that raids are louder in general, and the Marlin has quite a specific sound, so you can always tell where it is on the map, which makes the game feel alive. Overall, this single gun has revolutionized the bolt action questline and has made them feel possible for a player like myself who doesn't usually do them or really enjoy them at all. Secondly, we have the boss kills, where you effectively have to kill every boss in the game right up until the goons. Previously, these were a right pain in the ass and one of the biggest time sinks that you could have in the entire game. Not only are some quests locked behind other boss quests, meaning that if you do face them in raid and kill them, it doesn't actually count, but the low spawn rate in prior wipes until right at the end meant that going for bosses was extremely painful. Even a 20% chance to spawn in raid, which is quite high for old versions of Tarkov, was way too low to get enough attempts to actually make it feel like your time was being well spent. And a lot of players ended up with these quests left, running into a map to check for the boss and leave, then running into the next map to check for the boss and leave, and running it, and so on and so on. Not to mention the fact that you have to be the first person there to kill them, and often there's a number of other people doing it as well, so it's not just a case of them spawning on their own in the map. Off the back of the hardcore wipe, where the boss spawn rate was highly increased, yes, this did have some issues due to gear, but with a bit of balancing, BSG have brought this mechanic back to 1.0. Players are running into the bosses quite consistently, and I've seen a little bit of grumbling around on the internet one way or another about people getting murdered by killer every other interchange raid, but in my opinion, it is much more interesting having the bosses above 50% on every map at all times than just not having them there at all. The goons are probably the worst example of this and are generally the hardest to face, and previously their low spawn rate made it very difficult to actually just even find them at all. It was hard to know where they are because they move around between different maps, whereas now they spawn so much more often, the community tools that allow you to check whether the goons are spawning or not are much more accurate. Yes, it sucks getting Shift W pushed by Big Pipe right off the bat when you spawn on Shoreline, but overall for the general game, this is a huge bonus. All in all, the boss fights feel much more dynamic and less like a run-through sprint to the extract to just try and grind your way through it, and it makes Kappa way easier. The final big change that put me off doing Kappa in the past was the test drive set of missions. These have been added to over the years, and more keep getting added to the Kappa requirements, such as when I first did it, I only ever had to do test drive 1. Currently, we're all the way up to test drive number 6, but only the first 3 really caused that much controversy. Test Drive 1 requires the user of an M1A and specific attachments, being the hybrid 46 suppressor and a Schmidt & Bender 1:8 scope, to get 5 kills over 60 meters on any map. This one hasn't changed, and being able to choose where you do it is quite nice, and being only 5 kills makes it sound relatively doable too. But the 60 meter requirement is actually pretty annoying. It's more annoying than you might think, but I did eventually get this done on Shoreline. Now, Test Drive 2 is where the toxic nature of this whole line begins. Using the SR2M, players had to score 20 kills on Streets of Tarkov, a map that is unacceptable to many due to the low frame rate. Outside of that, players are typically quite geared on Streets, more so than the other maps in my experience due to its size and plentiful loot, and using the SR2M to get kills here can actually be really quite hard. 20 kills just takes a long time, but what BSG have done this wipe is they've added 2 more maps to the choices so that you no longer have to play just on Streets. You can now also do it either on Interchange or Ground Zero as well. This has really opened up the map choices a lot, and even allows you to combine things like Shooterborn in Heaven, for example, on Ground Zero with an SR2M sidearm to be able to complete multiple difficult quests at the same time, rather than just having to grind your face against one task over and over. This also has a huge side benefit of improving the experience of other players on the map too, because when playing Streets previously, pretty much every other player was using an SR2M because it was the only place that they had to go, and it was Kappa required that took a long time. Now, you're probably going to see much more gear diversity on Streets, and sure, an SR2M from time to time, but nothing like it used to be. After this is the even more notorious Test Drive Part 3, where you had to use an AK-12 with a Valde scope and a suppressor on Lighthouse and get yet another 20 PMC kills. The map choice here was more of an issue than anything else because so many people dislike Lighthouse so intensely, and so with BSG adding both customs and reserve to this particular quest requirement as well, you can now play in a much more flexible way that allows you to choose a map that isn't overall one of the worst in the whole game. This will probably have a similar effect on Lighthouse as well for other players as it has done on Streets, because the AKs get quite tiring after a while to fight. What made it extra bad on Lighthouse was that there were some supply issues as well for the AK-12 parts, and so that meant that players were incentivized to play extremely passively, making the chances of dying to a guy in a bush just absolutely skyrocket. So in summary, I think that BSG have fixed the 3 major problems with going for Kappa for regular players, and I think that this wipe is the best time that anybody has to complete Kappa because of A, the extra time being a permanent character you could take as long as you like, better bolt action quests using the Marlin, improved boss spawn rates to make it doable without grinding 200 raids per boss, and changes to the test drive questline. These have been the biggest problems with getting Kappa for a very long time, and although it will take some serious time commitment, it is now much more achievable for a greater amount of players than it ever has been before. So yes, I am going for Kappa this wipe. I'm nearly done with Shooterborn in Heaven, and I'm on Test Drive 2. You can check out my experience of doing it live over on Twitch and on YouTube Live, but otherwise, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.